Several of you wanted to know the journey of how I came to discover Hecate, how I got to this point in my practice. So I will start at the beginning of my discovery of Wicca and modern paganism. I will be drinking coffee. It is cold outside, and I am sorely undercaffeinated. So I was a freshman in high school, and of course I had an interest in the macabre and the supernatural. So I'd read everything from Stephen King's Carrie to William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. And I grew up watching horror movies. Nightmare on Elm Street was some of my favorite movies. And who didn't love the 90s cult classic, The Craft? And let's not forget every teenager's introduction into Egyptology, The Mummy. And of course there was classic literature too. Homer's The Iliad, The Odyssey, and The Crucible. And it was that book that started it all, The Crucible. We read it in class my freshman year, and we watched the movie. I was fascinated. I hadn't really delved into the Salem witch trials or everything that surrounded it. So to say my interest was captivated was an understatement. And then came the class project, the one that counted as the big grade for the semester. We had a list of topics, all relating to the subject matter of the Crucible. My choice was a comparative report, complete with visual reference and cited sources, witchcraft, then and now. And so my research began. Time in the school library, reading encyclopedias, checking out history books, doing computer searches. And it was through all of this research that I stumbled across Wicca. And the more I read, the more I was fascinated. Through my research, I discovered that witchcraft wasn't just mass hysteria, political power moves, or Hollywood camera tricks. It was an actual practice. And after I turned in my project, I got an A, because of course I did. I continued to do more research on Wicca, witchcraft, and paganism. I read everything I could get my hands on. Everything from Scott Cunningham to Silver Raven Wolf to Raymond Buckland. And my grandmother was my biggest supporter in my newfound interest and bought me every book I picked out at the bookstore. A lot of my witchy library is attributed to her. She even bought me my very first silver pentacle, and I wore it every day for many, many years. And I still have it, though it's retired now and just hangs on my wall in front of a mirror. Practicing Wicca and witchcraft of any form was not easy when I was a teenager. My ex-stepfather was the typical browbeating, holier-than-thou, holy roller who saw evil in everything except the things he did in hypocrisy. It had gotten to the point that movies such as Hocus Pocus and TV shows such as Xena, Warrior Princess, my all-time favorite, by the way, were banned in the house with parental blocks on the TV to make them inaccessible. I'd even come home from school one day to find a lot of my belongings gone. They had been taken to the burn barrel and destroyed. It was a devastating blow as a teenager. But my particular rebellion, I just would go out and rebuy the things that were destroyed. If it was deemed witchy, whether it was or not, it was taken from me. Clothing, books, tarot cards, CDs, candles, it didn't matter. It was only by the grace of the gods that I usually kept my silver pentacle tucked in within my shirt. And it never became a casualty of these holier-than-thou punishments. And I would love to say that my ex-stepfather's religious superiority attitude and personal attacks using religion stopped after I grew up and moved out. But they didn't. And that may be a story for another time. Maybe. Just know that my ex and estranged stepfather made my life a living hell in the name of religion and his Bible thumping well into my adulthood. But don't worry, he got his comeuppance in spades. I continued to practice Wicca throughout high school. And of course, I got in trouble every time something witchy was found in my possession. But it didn't stop me. I just found new ways to practice. With all the knowledge I consumed, my practice wasn't in the books that I read. It was in the beliefs I held, the wheel of the year I observed, and seeing the gods in everything around me. And no amount of punishments could take that away. After I graduated high school, I moved out and continued to practice Wicca. But now I was able to build my supplies, books, tools, everything that I would need or want for the rituals and observances I held. That doesn't mean it was easy all the time. I remember one time I went to a public park in the small town where I lived at the time to hold ritual with someone else I knew who practiced. Being in a small town in southern Indiana where throwing a stone in any direction, you could hit at least 5 churches. This was apparently something that was looked down upon. Because of course it was. Someone called the police on my friend and I for suspicious satanic activity. Because of course they did. That suspicious activity? We were sitting on the ground, a candle between us, chanting a prayer to the goddess. That's it. That was our suspicious activity. The police came, told us that we had to leave the park because there were some concerned citizens who didn't like what we were doing. Now, being barely 20 at the time and still not having yet found my voice to stand up for myself, I didn't argue or even attempt to say that I had just as much right to be in the park as anyone else and that I wasn't breaking any laws. Instead, my friend and I simply just got our things and left. And that was the end of that night. Sadly, more than once, I was a target of Christian hate, and still am. It's just now, I'm not afraid to bite back. I was Wiccan for 6 years, following the wheel of the year, absolutely living by every line in the Wiccan Rede. I focused on healing rituals and honoring nature with the cycles of the moon and the turn of the seasons. And then I found Hecate. Or rather, she found me. And that will be part 2.